So magic wood, what is this stuff right here that is highly desired in the survival community? Or if you're like me, you just love having fires and want to get that stubborn fire lit. So this wood right here has a lot of properties. As you can see, it is extremely flammable, burns very well, and is relatively hard to put out once you get it going. But what is it? Let's show you how you find it and what it really is and all the different uses for it. So if you look behind me here, you see an entire forest of pine trees that we planted on our property about 9 years ago. So we're getting warmer. While this has a lot to do with pine trees, it's not this specific type, although pine trees in general are what makes your magic wood. It's those resins and everything else that's trapped inside of that resin that makes it so flammable. Take a peek at some of these trees out here. So here's something worth noting. Gives you an idea of the amount of resins in these pine trees. Hopefully you can see that glistening in the sun up there, but where it's coming out of the tree right there, dripping all the way down. Look on the side of the tree right here. And this stuff right here that's dripping everywhere is extremely sticky resin. But this isn't quite as concentrated as what we're discussing today, but this is still highly flammable. So as you can see, the pine tree itself is full of saps and resins, and trapped inside of those resins, well, is things like turpentine, for example. This all is natural and in the trees themselves. So in order to get really dense, resin-filled magic wood, we have to go look for a different type of tree. And you're gonna see this stuff has a lot of different names out on the internet. You can hear it called heart of pine, magic wood, lighter knot. The names just keep going on and on and on. It has a wonderful, just woodsy smell and aroma to it. Almost kind of reminds me of pine saw. It's extremely dense. It is practically rot resistant. The other beautiful thing about this wood is, well, it does very well even when wet because it is so dense and solid and packed full of those resins right there. Well, guess what? It doesn't have a place to absorb up moisture. That's why it's very, very popular in the survival community. We'll show you how well this lights too. We'll show you those resins that sweat out and how this is also excellent for starting most types of fires. So take a look at these towering behemoths right here. These are huge, huge pine trees. So this particular pine tree right here is called a loblolly pine. Take a look at the bark. It's got a little bit different type of bark. It is not uncommon for these trees to have splits. Maybe you can see it's just loaded with a few thousand pine cones up there. And you can get some good resin and stumps and solid pine out of a tree like this. But the best heart of pine, the best lighter knot, in my opinion, comes from your southern yellow pines. These normally grow long, tall, and straight. This is a lot of what you'll see telephone poles, power poles, things such as that made out of. And you can take a look, completely different type of bark here, a much bigger, blockier type of bark. Look at the size of this one right here. Absolutely massive tree. And we've got them a lot bigger on the property. I guess now I'm officially a tree hugger. Huge, massive. So the older these monsters get right here, the more dense the resins, the more natural turpentines and everything else that will condense and pull into them. And because these are so resin filled and so tall out here in the forest, we call these things lightning rods. They typically do not have a very long life because we get so much lightning down here in Florida. These get hit a lot. That's the most common way I know of them dying. And once the tree itself dies off, it pulls all those resins from the top back down to the heart of the tree. We're going to show you some heart of pine poles here in just a second. And ultimately, as the tree rots down and falls away, the most dense resins and dense wood winds up down in the stump itself. Let's go take a look at some of the stumps I have around the property that I have future plans to dig up and use. Come on, boy. Having fun exploring, aren't you? Yay! Woods time. Oh, I know. You want to get out there in that water, don't you? So what you got right here is probably some of the most hard type of lightered wood to find. It is straight lightered poles, or you'll hear it called heart of pine. This is essentially the center of a very large tree after all the bark and outside fibers have rotted away. This is an extremely hard resin core. Now these are already very old, but they are very rot resistant. A lot of fences were built back in the day using this wood right here because it lasted so long. So it's very hard to find pole form left. Typically the tree is usually rotted down to the stump by the time you find those. So this is pretty desirable stuff right here. And once you cut on into the inside, you can see it starts becoming resin filled right here. Now again, with these poles being so old, they've lost a lot of the luster, we'll just say, but they still burn very, very well. If you want to cut them in small chunks like this is how I get all my kindling for starting fires. Again, or I could go put these in the ground right now and they would last a long time as fence posts, even though they're older. So littered all throughout these woods are these old stumps right here that just never seem to rot or die. You can see how solid they are. Cut some off a while back. It takes them a long time to eventually decay. That is a lightered stump. Over there is another one that looks like it finally has rotted, but it'll still burn good. And you'll be shocked at how much of that stump is beneath the dirt. You would think things down in the dirt that's soaking wet right by a pond would rot away, but not this dense wood. It just lasts. So if you were out in, say, a survival situation, needed to start a fire if it was a wet, damp day, I would be looking for these stumps or the lower limbs on certain types of pine trees. The lower, the more resin filled. So if we come over here and take a look, there's another one of those large stumps. This one has definitely seen better days. But as you can see, I just snapped a piece off right there. Resin. Boy, get out of that water. You just can't help yourself. This dog loves him some water. Get out of that swamp. So here's an old fence line on the property, and if you take a look, these are old lighter posts right here. Another excellent source to get lightered wood. Fences used to almost exclusively be built out of lightered. There's an old lightered pole there, another one down there, but these are showing their age. So if we come down here along the water's edge, there's a stump in there that's very hard to see. Another really large stump right here. One here, and they just continue to go all throughout the woods. See, this is still a really solid stump. If I could dig this up, there's a lot of it still down there. Yeah, you're falling in holes, ain't you? Because there was cows all out there earlier. So now you know how to find it. Low-hanging limbs of certain types of pine trees are going to have the highest concentrations of fresh resins. If you're fortunate enough to find the poles laying on the ground, that was the very dead center of a tree. Very hard to find. And the stumps in the ground, to me, has your highest concentrations of flammable resins, turpentines, and everything else out of that very old tree. That's what I'm looking for something that will really light and stay lit. All right, so I've grabbed another piece of relatively dense magic wood right here. Let me show you why so many people like it. Not only can you split it up into small pieces of kindling like this is how I prefer it. Once you get that resin actually bubbling and lit, you just about can't put this stuff out right here. It burns so hot, makes a big flame, and gets the fire started great. Now the only downside to this is, because it's so resin filled, it does have a lot of creosote and smoke that comes off of it. So while a little bit of this to start, say a stove fire, should be fine, I would not burn much of this on an inside fireplace or stove for fear of smutting up my chimney. Now we have fires outside all the time. This is Florida. We just kind of have a recreational fire, so we're not really concerned about that part of it. So you'll see a lot of people take a pocket knife. This is where people in survival situations really love this stuff. And just put a few shavings down, just curl some off. I probably should have a sharper knife for this, huh? And once you get some of that resin actually curl off, I mean, as soon as you touch it, it's lit. Touch it again. No other wood burns that quick. Now, see all the black smoke coming off of it? This is why I would probably not burn much of it in my fireplace. So you could take a bunch of these shavings off just like this, really thin shavings, and put them in a bag for starting, say, a campfire, fire out in the woods. And again, well, rain, not much really bothers this stuff. It does pretty well in the wind as well once you get it lit and going. But look at that, listen to the crackle. See all that pop and crackle coming out of it? That's those resins boiling out. So not only these little shavings right here, extremely flammable and lifesavers, a lot of people like to take the back side of a knife and do this number right here. Almost make like a fine dust or shaving off of it. This is exactly how I would start a fire out in the woods. If I was really struggling and needed to get one going quickly, go find some of this stuff. Put these shavings down just like that. And as soon as you touch them with a flame or a spark even, they're going. See what I mean? You could even take one of those rods, strike your knife against it. One little spark touches that, it's ready to go. Now, if you really wanted to get a fire going, go ahead and get almost that sawdust type material right there, and then peel you some off like that. Touch it again. Now that fire is going to go and go quickly. So one other popular method of using this type of wood right here as well, basically almost like a survival torch out in the woods. You could take a log or a piece of wood, split the end open, stick this down in it, tie it off, and start splitting this open. This stuff splits really easy because it's so hard. Now, long story short, when you split a lot of it like that, you can actually wedge some twigs and stuff down in between it, separate out all these individual pieces that you split, and you'll wind up with a heck of a flame off the top, and it burns forever because this is so dense. Actually, my fingers are getting really sticky. All right, so here's that piece that I barely split apart. If I were to actually stick some twigs down in there or something to separate them, you would get a much bigger flame. But you can see how this can be a torch, and this stuff lasts forever like this. It really does. You go around lighting things, see in the dark, and it does not burn fast because it's so dense and resin filled. Now, here's the other cool part about it. Not only does that smell great. All right, so this is how flammable this stuff is. You see that we're out? Right back lit. And it won't take it long to go from piece to piece to piece, take off again. I love this stuff. All right, well, this isn't a bushcraft or survival channel, so we're not gonna get into much more of it. I personally love this stuff because it just works. Whenever you need a lot of fire outside, maybe you're dealing with some green wood, damp wood, things such as that, this really can't get wet, really cannot go bad on you. Shave some of it off, split up a few pieces. Once you get it started, you will not stop it. Then you can put green wood right over the top of it. It'll dry it out. You will get your fire started. All right, hopefully you enjoyed that little educational episode. I decided to do this because I've had a lot of y'all asked a while back when y'all seen me using some of this in an episode and talking about it. People are asking, hey, what the heck is lighter wood? What is magic wood? What is this stuff that you're talking about? So I thought I'd take a time to show you around the property, kind of educate you a little on this stuff. It has so many uses, and it's a very treasured and loved wood. All right, thanks for watching. Catch you on the next episode.